Great. It's an honor to speak to you, Nicola Vermooten, the Managing Director of Accessed ED. So could you just please tell us about your background, who you are, and after then, tell us about what you're doing at Access ED, Accessed NPC, and what's inspired its founding.
Great. Thanks so much for having me, Langelihle. It's really an honor to be here. I'm always so excited when I have the opportunity to connect with people who are also as passionate as I am about social impact and making real world change. So thanks for having me. Um, so I come from a background in industrial psychology, and while I was doing my PhD, I actually did it in the education space, and that really sparked my interest a lot in education. And that's what led me to do the work that I am doing today, in the education space, working with partners, tutors, and collaborators to really have real world impact in the lives of young people. And at Access Aid, we are really driven by the simple but powerful belief that talent is universal. It's not about um, but opportunity simply is not. Our mission is to bridge the gap by dismantling systemic barriers to higher education, not with temporary solutions, but creating sustainable pathways for underrepresented students. Um, to not only enter university, but thinking about having them really succeed and excel at university. Access Ed was founded back in 2016 with the ambition to adapt a proven university access model to global context. We recognize that at that stage, we recognize that a critical flaw in the traditional development work often is that programs are designed far removed from communities that they actually aim to serve. So we set out to collaborate with local NGOs, education entrepreneurs, and universities across multiple countries to ensure that community-led initiatives that are locally rooted in their approach are set up for lasting impact. Given the transformational impact that our work in South Africa had, the strategic decision was then made by our Board of Trustees in the UK to rehome Access Aid to South Africa in 2022, where we are now registered as a fully operational South African NPO and PBO. I think it's important to highlight that this wasn't just a relocation, it was really a recommitment to being in and from the communities that we serve. And we're now really locally rooted in South Africa. Our commitment to global equity in education continues. So we are still continuing to work with different countries, thinking of the likes of Ireland, Hong Kong, Dubai, India, South Africa, Malaysia, and Taiwan. Um, and our program blueprint really remains scalable for change across all of these countries. We're actively sharing insights with our local and global partners and maintain our collaborations across the world. But it's really important that our focus is on community-led initiatives. My journey personally with Access Ed began, as I mentioned, while I was doing my PhD as a PhD tutor. So I was doing a PhD in the education space, specifically looking at the well-being of public school teachers. But I realized there's so much work that we can also do to support teachers and students at the same time. So I worked as a PhD tutor on one of our Access Ed Zeta programs, our flagship program in South Africa. And that placed me in township schools where I really witnessed the extraordinary potential of students who thrive when they're actually given a system that believes in them. So today, our model, like at that time, still leverages local postgraduate students thinking about masters, PhD, and postdoctoral researchers who combine their educational expertise with their lived experience. And this really then creates this wonderful opportunity for employment, but it also expands access. And our curriculum is then co-designed by the researchers to ensure that it's culturally relevant and academically rigorous. So, yeah, that's really the story of how we rehomed to South Africa, where we were founded, and how I fit in with Access Aid. I think just to emphasize again that while we are now in South Africa, and this is our home, and we're really proud of that. It's important to always recognize that inequality has no borders. So our partnerships still extend beyond South Africa. And it's really about delivering and building from within and not from above. So we're always still open to fostering that international dialogue, whether that's in the rest of Africa or abroad. But we are really, really here to help students beat the odds, to help them rewrite what's set out for their future. And that's really going to make long-lasting, impactful change.
I like that you mentioned the parts where you talked about, inequality, um, and the way it integrates with the Access NPC, community, and how it helps the youth and striving Africans like ourselves.
Absolutely.
Um, I want to get into the aspects of there's this. I don't know if you watch movies, but I do watch movies sometimes. There's this great movie I was catching up with. It's called Platform.
Yes.
So the platform at the top, the guys who create these guys who make food, delicious food and stuff like that. They make whatever you ordered. So they make cakes, pizzas, and everything. At the top, you have all the food perfectly put out for dished out for the participants in the platform to eat. But
Yes.
as the platform drops below, it's like the economy, right? It drops below when you talk about capitalism and stuff like that, or communalism. So the guy asked, "Are you communist?" The guys were at the bottom. They were asking, "Are you communist? Why are you letting all those guys below think they are equal with us? We should eat the food and let these guys eat what we're going to be left with." So inequality integrates with education in a very deeper level, especially in our country. I want to ask, like, how has your work with Accessed NPC impacted children and youth development in your community?
Yes, I must say I'm an avid movie watcher like yourself, so I really appreciate the metaphor that you also just shared with me. I mean, as you say, inequality and education, especially in the South African community, are so intertwined. And that's really where Access Aid steps in to make an impact on children and youth development in the local community. I've seen personally firsthand how our work has fundamentally reshaped the education landscape for young people in South Africa, but also abroad, creating transformative change that extends beyond simply just university admissions. If I think about, the impact that it has, um, and thinking about how our work is related to inequality and what impact it has in communities locally on the ground, I always like to think about sort of three interconnected dimensions that I refer to. And firstly, it's really focused on intellectual empowerment. So we've witnessed a remarkable transformation as scholars develop sophisticated academic capabilities through the attendance of the Access EdZA program in South Africa. It really helps them to develop university style skills that they will need through the attendance of their tutorials. Students who initially approached learning really through memorization and just regurgitating key facts are now really able to gradually embrace analytical thinking and intellectual inquiry. This is really a cognitive shift from passive absorption to active engagement and prepares them not only for higher education, but also thinking about thriving in the workplace in future. Then, secondly, if we think about reimagined possibilities, for many young people from underserved communities, higher education often exists as an abstract abstract concept rather as a tangible possibility. So our mentor model, where tutors share a similar background as scholars, makes this makes the focus quite different. So it's not just about academic achievement, but it's also making them see that it is really attainable to go to higher education and succeed, excelling to a master's, PhD, or postdoctoral level. We consistently observe profound shifts in the self-perception of participants, where they really begin to see themselves as legitimate candidates for academic success post grade 12 qualifications. And then finally, and thirdly, this is really something that inspires me on a personal level as well, is if we think about community transformation, so that broader ecosystem. The most endearing impact really emerges through the multiplication impact of our alumni network. So we often see former scholars and tutors return as mentors, role models, and even community leaders, creating sustainable cycles of empowerment. Their presence in schools and neighborhoods then gradually change what the community narrative is about, who belongs in higher education, and what is possible for young people from that particular community. So these interconnected changes, thinking about individual capacity, the collective mindset, and then community ecosystems, it really demonstrates how educational access can catalyze deep systemic transformation if we think about overcoming challenges with inequality in South Africa. The true measure of our impact appears not only in classrooms, where we often see it firsthand, but it's really about evolving expectations from families, schools, neighborhood, um, members of a neighborhood or a community. And it's really about collectively raising aspirations of young people in terms of what they can achieve in their future.
What were the biggest challenges you faced in building this organization?
So, following our rehoming, and I think this is sometimes I participate in quite a number of forums with other NGOs in South Africa, but also abroad. And something that often comes up is sustainability. So, following our rehoming in 2022, sustainability was really a major learning curve for us. Early reliance on unpredictable funding forced us to fundamentally rethink social change and how it gets resourced. And so we decided to build a multi-pronged financial model that ensures that every rand that is donated or secured really has maximum impact for the young people on our programs. So firstly, to set up this multi-pronged sort of model in terms of financial security, we registered as a PBO or a public benefit organization, and we also secured broad-based Black economic empowerment, social development certification. So this enables us to ensure that individuals and corporations can get involved by investing in Access Ed, and they at the same time then benefit from tax advantages. So it's not only about compliance, it's also about aligning with South Africa's transformation agenda, with donors and their specific strategic objectives at the same time. Then simultaneously, we also leveraged our global expertise, of course, previously coming from the UK. And we've now, through consulting contracts with institutions like the Commonwealth Scholarship Commission and Cambridge University, set up programs that enable us to support our international charitable work. So these partnerships really create a cycle where our international work funds our local charitable mission while allowing us to refine models and bring back our key learnings to township areas in South Africa. But when we talk about challenges, and I think I always like to see the silver lining of any dark cloud or challenge, you know, when we face challenges at Access Ed, and we have faced a number of them, I always just like to remind myself that our greatest obstacles can really become our most valuable teachers. So every challenge I'm grateful for because it's really helped us to strip away assumptions and forced us to build something that's even more authentic, more community rooted, and ultimately more impactful. So in the social space especially, I think the beautiful paradox of this work is that the very things that threaten to break us ultimately in a sense help to also make us stronger.
I mean, what pushed you to actually, I mean, you have your PhD, you're industrial psychologist. What made you push and what made you try to make you pivot to more other things? What made you think other things, and what made you, how can I put this? Yeah, really, what made you trying to help so many young people? And what made you, what drived you, what ignited your passion? I want to put it like that. Yeah. What ignited your passion?
I'm worried that you're asking me this question because I have to force myself to keep my response short and sweet because this is something that I can talk about for a very long time. But as I mentioned before, while I was doing my PhD, um, I had the opportunity to visit a lot of public schools in South Africa and really see the on the ground reality. And being immersed in that environment really just opened my eyes to what challenges we are facing on the ground in schools. And it was something that really kept me awake at night, thinking about what can we do? How can we solve this problem? At that stage, my research was taking, as I mentioned, more of a different direction, focusing on public school teachers. But at the same time, I was really torn because I could see the challenges that young people were facing day in and day out as I visited these countless schools in South Africa. And that really just changed my desire to really focus on how we can support teachers through our programs because of course the work that we do in South Africa and abroad, our charitable programs, essentially runs as an extracurricular program. So it helps teachers to alleviate some of their um, you know, administrative burdens and also in terms of thinking about academic enrichment and motivation for pupils in their class, but it also enables us to really focus on the pupils, the individual learners in a particular class, and how we can support them. So it was really um, through seeing the on the ground realities and just knowing that there's untapped potential in so many young people, and it's not for a lack of ability or potential. It's really for a lack of opportunity and access that many young people in South Africa specifically are falling through the gaps, and that's simply just not a reality that I could accept. And so I felt that my PhD qualification, which laid a really good foundation in understanding the South African education system and education also globally, alongside my background in industrial psychology, really actually positioned me well for this work. And so it was a passion alongside these qualifications or background that really um, led me to pursue this work actively. And I do believe that it is a calling uh, to be in this space.
How did it feel to be recognized in the Forbes Under 40 Africa Awards? And what does that recognition mean to you personally and professionally?
Sure. Being recognized in the 40 Under 40 South Africa or Africa Awards was really, I'd say, deeply humbling. Not just as a personal milestone, but also as a reflection of the collective work behind the mission of Access Ed. In truth, and I think this is always important to acknowledge, this isn't really just mine alone. It's really the incredible team effort of educators, mentors, partners, scholars that are all working together to shape what higher education looks like in South Africa, but also globally. Um, Personally, this recognition was really a powerful reminder that staying rooted in your values, especially when the work is slow and complex and oftentimes invisible, matters. Sometimes the wheels turn quite slow and you don't necessarily see the impact that you would like immediately. And then these milestones are really just encouraging. In the non-profit space, impact isn't always immediately, and you don't see what you are doing have that impact in the short term always. Um, so it was really just um, wonderful to have that acknowledgement, and it was in a sense affirming and energizing. It reminded me that we're building something that's worthwhile, that's community owned, locally led, and that it's really something that's not only necessary but possible. I think on a professional level, it's opened some conversations and some collaborations across sectors and borders. For me, what was really exciting was that it signaled potential to partners, that innovative African-led solutions to global challenges aren't just really viable, but in fact, in some instances, it's actually leading the way. So perhaps most meaningfully, it sent a message to the young people that we serve that your story matters, your leadership is needed, and your future is really worth investing in. So I think, yeah, although awards come and go, being recognized as part of a generation that is actively building South Africa and the way that we want it to be, addressing inequalities, that is a responsibility that I actually carry with deep gratitude and even deeper commitment.
Can you share a story of a young person whose life was transformed through Accessed NPC's work?
Absolutely. I mean, if you ask that question, there's quite a number of people that I think of that come to mind, and I typically see the faces in front of me because those are the individuals that, when the going gets tough, those are the people, the stories that I remind myself of, that makes it all worthwhile. So one story that comes to mind is of a lady, a bright young woman, Karabu, that's currently studying BSc Civil Engineering at the University of Witwatersrand. And I had the chance to sit back with her a while ago when she was still in her third year and to reflect on her journey and how Access Ed was really part of her story. And it was really so inspiring, but because her story really truly embodies the transformative power of exposing learners to possibilities of higher education and real world problem solving. So, what she explained to me when we met up was growing up in a township area. She was always environmentally conscious, but she didn't fully grasp how her academic knowledge would translate into tangible solutions until she actually participated in the Access Ed ZA program. She was attending a course on carbon capture and storage, and she said that this was really a turning point for her. She said at school she mostly learned about theory, but Access Ed was the first time that she actually saw how concepts fit together in the real world, like capturing CO2 from coal plants. And she described it, in her own words, as really being an eye-opening experience. Um, she also explained that the experience didn't just deepen her passion for sustainability, but it gave her practical skills, thinking about things like research, referencing, note taking, formulating an argument that she still uses in her engineering studies today. So even now, she said, and I found that so beautiful, she said she still has her course material from the time that she attended the course quite a number of years back, and she still revisits it for inspiration. As part of the program cycle that she participated in, she was actually taken to a campus in Johannesburg, and she said that that was really something that ignited something in the students and her peers that she could see that in the peers that attended this campus visit with her. She said it felt for the first time like that it was something that a place where they belonged, and it was something that ignited a new energy in them. So for me, I always think about her story, and as I mentioned, there are many other stories like this, but it underscores that Access Ed's work is so critical in South Africa, but also thinking globally. We bridge the gap between theory and practice, really showing young people what the knowledge that they are acquiring through school and through university studies can actually mean in reality one day, how it can be used to solve real world problems. Then also, it motivates young people from underserved communities to aspire to higher education. So, as I mentioned before, it's really about changing the idea of what is possible, that young people from all communities can really pursue higher education. And that's where we need to step in to not only uh, serve as a source of motivation and inspiration, but also help them to equip them with practical tools to actually access that pathway. And then finally, um, to link to that as well, to equip students with skills that they can use at school, but also in future, whether that is while studying at a university or a tertiary institution, or even when they're one day working. Um, so I think if I think about Karabu, and there's one quote from her that really sort of stays with me. She said, Access Ed gave us the desire to push ourselves. It wasn't just an opportunity, it was like a spark. So we really want to be that spark for many young people. And her journey from a township classroom to tackling environmental challenges as a future engineer is really proof that an intervention can really redefine, or along many other factors, but help redefine a young person's future.
Okay, what advice would you give to young people who would want to launch initiatives that drive social change?
Sure. I think that that is quite a difficult one because there are many different things that I would like to say, many different learnings I wish I had in advance, but some things that I've sort of picked up on and that I would emphasize to a young person who would like to start their own initiative is to really start with listening. Don't start by imposing solutions. The best social change doesn't begin with a business plan. It really begins with deep curiosity and humility. So ask yourself, who is already doing the work that you're interested in, and what can I learn from them? What does the community that I want to serve say? Not just what do I assume their needs are. Also, don't wait until the day that you feel ready to do the work. Social impact work is always going to be what I like to call messy, and you'll never have all the answers or all the skills to start. So I would say start small, test ideas, and be willing to really adapt your ideas based on the feedback that you receive. Some of the most meaningful breakthroughs at Access Ed came from mistakes that we made that forced us to go back to the drawing board and reevaluate. But in the end, it helped us to grow. So I'd say also build your team quite early. Change, as I mentioned today at earlier points, change is really a collective effort. So surround yourself with people who share your values and think about how you can work together um, to make positive impact. Also, surround yourself with individuals that will challenge your thinking. It's really important to have individuals that will keep you grounded, but also motivated at the same time around you. And then finally, I'd say, start with the why. Um, so understand why you are pursuing this specific area of social change, why you want to be in this field. You asked me that question before. Why did I decide to pursue this work? Um, and I think it's important to acknowledge that this work can sometimes be slow. It can be frustrating at times. But when you're driven by real purpose, it goes beyond, recognition and ego. You'll find the resilience to keep going, even on the days when you feel like absolutely nothing is working out the way that you have planned. Um, and also, it's important to not acknowledge and always have this in the back of your mind that you don't have to change the world overnight. Just change something. Just try to change one thing at a time. And you can build from there and really have impactful initiatives.
What's your best book?
Sure, my best book. Um, I'd say one of the books that I recently read was Simon Sinek's Start with the Why. And that really for me went back, as I mentioned now, it's always important to have the why in the back of your mind. Why are you pursuing certain things? What's the purpose behind an initiative? So that's really something that I always keep front of mind, in terms of my work, but also in my personal life. So that was a really impactful book that I read recently.
Thank you. This was a great interview.
Right. Thanks so much for having me. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And yes, wonderful to be part of your podcast.